I started out really on the anti-trafficking platform, and I felt like I was denying a part of who I was in my own story. And so I started to bridge this gap into sex worker rights also. And I have to say it's not always welcomed. Okay, most of the time it's not welcomed, except by the sex work community. But we actually see great hope in unity between uniting the anti-trafficking movement and the sex worker rights movement. Because really the core of it is that we all want abuse and violence against not just women and children, but people. Because we also have a lot of men who have been trafficked and a lot of men in the sex trade, and then transgender also. So there's a lot of issues where we all have the same heart and the same desire. Everybody wants trafficking to stop because trafficking is abusive. Anything by force, fraud, or coercion is abuse. And so I have great joy and great hope that we're making huge progress. But what I really want to talk about is from my perspective and my experiences. Is the anti-trafficking side paints the sex work side as evil and horrific. Or they don't even acknowledge that it exists. And the sex work side has been so silenced that they have to stifle some of the realities, like the violence that really does happen, in order to just have their voices heard. And neither is fully correct, because really we have a problem, and it affects everyone. So I'm going to take you back about 34 years. Okay, that'll tell you right there how old I am. You don't have to guess. I was born in 1979. I'm coming up on 35, and I'm really excited because I never expected to live this long. Wrinkles are joy for me. My parents were like products of the 60s and 70s hippies. We lived in a 14-foot travel trailer. We went kind of wherever the wind blew. My parents, while my mom was in labor, drove to Paradise, California, so my mom could give birth to me, and I could say for the rest of my life that I was born in Paradise. So I have to tell you guys that, because that was a big effort on her part, right? I'm lucky I made it out of the 70s with a name like Jessica, because it would have been really weird, which would have been totally hip and cool these days. So anyways, I said all that to say that my parents really wanted me. My parents, they loved me, they wanted me, they cherished me. I was their only child, but they both came from abusive backgrounds. And while they didn't abuse me, they were silent. And silence about abuse doesn't stop it. What it does is it puts our blinders on, it closes our ears, and it says we're not going to acknowledge that it exists. But you know what? It happens all the time. I hate statistics. I don't use statistics because, honestly, I think they're really understated. I would feel very comfortable in using my guesstimation of a non-official statistic, which would be, I would think about half of America has been sexually abused while in their childhood. Stats say somewhere between a quarter and a third. My abuse was never reported. Actually, most of the people I know, their abuse was never reported. So that tells me the numbers are already skewed, and they're not showing large enough numbers. When I was 4 years old, we moved to Houston, Texas. So we're living in this KOA, and there were 3 neighbor boys who lived next door. They were 13, 15, and 19-year-old boys, brothers. And they started having sex with me when I was 4. Now, I didn't use the term rape, although there's nothing in my mind that doubts it was rape. But from a 4-year-old's perspective, they were showing me love. And I thought that's what love was because I believed them and no one told me about rape. You don't think to talk to them about sex, right? And yet, by the time I was 5 years old and we moved away, it was so completely normal for me that I actually remember climbing on top of one of them, riding them, and getting off. Like it was something I did every day. I was 5 years old. What this does to the mind is it makes us think that this is normal, it's my fault, 4 and 5 years old, I was completely able to orgasm because our bodies are created to be sexual. And when that gets turned on, guess what happens? If it's not loving and violent, yeah, you can orgasm. But I thought it was normal. Now, before you get all crazy about these 3 brothers, I want you to think that there's this 13-year-old boy sitting at home, and he's playing his Atari, because that's what we played in '84. Maybe. I don't even know if Atari was going yet. And he's like, geez, I'm bored. I think I'm going to go have sex with the girl next door. Right, that doesn't happen. This is cycles of abuse that go on and go on and go on, and until someone stops it, it just continues. Someone showed him love in the same way he showed me love, and we're going to keep going. We moved away, life goes on. I'm 10 years old, we're living in Oregon, and my father is murdered in a homicide-suicide. He was a 17-year-old young man. He put my dad on his knees, pulled the trigger, and then put a different gun to his own head and blew his head off. Now again, do I think this 17-year-old young man woke up one day and was like, I think I'm going to kill a guy today? That's not how this works, right? This is not what healthy looks like. This is what cycles of abuse look like. All of my childhood was also completely engulfed in rather extreme poverty. We didn't have much of anything besides like a 14-foot trailer. We didn't have a lot of stability. And when my dad was murdered, that was completely gone. And it was just her and I. And now she had to go work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet in order to provide for her and I. I felt like I lost both parents. You guys remember middle school? Remember how horrifying it was? That is like hands down the worst, most traumatic experience in most people's lives, right? Because you're like gangly and awkward and nothing's right. And you like all the boys, but they're like this tall in comparison to you and nothing is right. That's all of our experiences. You guys are not alone. That's a pretty unanimous decision that middle school sucks. Excuse me. I was alone and angry and hurt and confused, and I just wanted someone to hear me and see me. I just wanted someone to listen. And I was angry because there was no one there. I did the same thing that most other people do in middle school when they're not being heard and their needs aren't being met. I started with sex, completely consensual, went to alcohol, and then to drugs. By the time my mom got remarried when I was 13, I had pretty much jumped completely off the deep end. What the deep end looks like in the early 90s is a cheerleader. You can laugh, it's okay. Now it's like goth or emu or something, right? Did I say emu? That's a bird, emo. We can be birds too, maybe that's the next fad, right? Okay, someone do birds. You've got birds. You've got feathers, we're gonna do. Okay, see? Because in my day it was cheerleading. I'm blushing. Funny, I can't mispronounce a word, but I can talk about rape. So, my mom got remarried. To a man, I'm trying to be nice, that wasn't very nice. And it wasn't bad in the way that we view bad. He didn't beat me. He didn't do anything wrong besides the verbal abuse that I was just shit. And that's all I was. And I even then said just shit. Why do we minimize the verbal abuse to say that that's not bad enough? And yet it really is. Because by 14, I started running away from home. I started searching more and more and more, deeper and deeper and deeper. By the time I dropped out of high school, it was almost the end of my sophomore year. I was on honor roll with a 3.83 GPA and was the captain of my junior varsity cheerleading team. And I walked away. I couldn't do it anymore. I ended up going to a Job Corps. Job Corps is an alternative to jail time for nonviolent offenders ages 16 to 24. It's like kids camp for drug dealers and out-of-control teens. It's still going, it's a federal program. So my mom basically handed over parental rights without emancipating me to the federal government to get my GED and get trained in a vocation. Really, it took a white, blonde cheerleader and stuck me in the middle of gangs. Right? It doesn't work out so well because I understood that because I was white, I could get away with a lot more. I could do things that no one else could get away with because I could just smile and say, sorry. And then just say, oh, you're so cute. Oh, you're beautiful, you're smart. And no one ever took the time. No one ever listened. I ended up running away so many times that they graduated me out of a 2-year program in 9 months. There was a whole lot that happened. I ended up running drugs, seeing a number of murders, being involved with the gangs, and I said, I'm done. And I ran from that entire life. And I ended up getting a job at a restaurant next to a big mall in Portland, Oregon. It was like right at my 17th birthday. And this man kept coming in, and he was freaking amazing. Like really amazing. Because he listened to me, and he heard me, and he understood like who I was. He was a little bit older, and he owned a business, and like everything was good. And who doesn't want that, really? Everybody wants a partner that's gonna listen and love and encourage and like really listen, you know, not think about the game or think about whatever. They're like fully engaged. Yeah, we want that. And one day, first, he got me a fake ID. One day he asked me, he said, you know, if you're already having sex, why wouldn't you want to get paid? And I thought, that is a damn good question. You know how hard it is waiting tables? A lot of you guys probably do it. It's like hard work. You pour 20 cups of coffee and they leave you a quarter. Maybe now they leave you 50 cents. Why wouldn't I want to get paid? That's a really good question. So he put me out on the street the first time. I went completely willingly. And that first trick, John, buyer, whatever you want to call them, they're all the same thing. I use trick because that was the term that I had always used and was comfortable with. It's not derogatory to me. It just, it's what I always called them. The first trick picked me up. It took like maybe 3 minutes. And as I was getting out of his truck, he drove like a short, like a Toyota pickup truck where it was like narrow and tall. I had to turn my back to him and hop down because it was like a ways down. And as I was doing that, he grabbed the back of my purse and started fighting with me. And in the process, he stepped on the gas, I got sucked under the truck, and he ran me over. First trick. I am hoping that you guys are thinking, wow, this is dangerous. Probably shouldn't do this. This is really dangerous. But I wasn't thinking that. Because I had been prepared for that since I was 4 years old. And all I could think sitting on the asphalt, looking at these diamond imprints on my leg, was how dare this bastard screw me and try to take my money. I made $40 in like 3 to 5 minutes. Who the hell does he think he is? And I got in the back of that guy's car from the restaurant, my friend. And he asked for the money. Didn't even think about it. It was 220s folded up, 40 bucks. Didn't even think about it. I can remember it as clear as it was yesterday, handing him the money. With that one action, I lost everything. The right to go where I wanted, to wear what I wanted, to paint my fingernails whatever color I wanted. Everything was controlled, whether I eat, drink, sleep, work, how much I make, everything. He started taking me city to city to city so fast that the private investigators that my mom hired to try to find me couldn't. And for 14 to 15 months, I was turning between like 10 and 30 tricks a night to hit my $1,000 quota. I only remember one time that I didn't make it. I talk a lot about racism because I fully am aware that I am white, and because I am white, that gives me white privilege. You guys have heard of this, right? Do I like that it exists? No. Can I change it? I can do my best. Should I be shameful because of my color? Absolutely not. I can't change it any more than anyone else can. But I can be aware that I have it, and I can address it. There was one night, I was in Hawaii, and I didn't make enough money. And I had recruited a young girl that was like 13, 14, 15 years old. She was the cutest little black girl. I was a bottom bitch, which meant I was the most favorite, so I did a lot of recruiting. I did a lot of things that weren't good. That's what you do to stay alive. I had recruited this young gal, and she had the cutest little pom-poms right here. And when we came in, the living room was lined in plastic. That is never a good sign. He sent me into the bedroom, and I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, looking out over the ocean and the sun and the sky, because I had worked all night, and so had she. And I listened as her bones broke, and her screams went silent, and yet the hitting continued until he pulled me into the other room. She was missing a chunk of her head, and he got in my face, covered in blood, and said, "This is all your fault. If you had made enough money, this wouldn't have happened to her." And I went out and worked. Sometimes the scars we don't wear on our body. We wear them in our mind. I understand white privilege because I lived it. She took my beating because she was worth less. I couldn't take it anymore. I had experienced 2 beatings myself that made me completely unrecognizable. The first one broke my trust in him, and the second one was actually coming back through the US border, and it broke my trust in humanity. And I knew fully and completely exactly what my pimp told me. Once a hoe, always a hoe. That's all you're ever worth. And I started planning. So I was working for an escort service in Seattle. And it was ran by a woman who was a sex worker, more the former sex worker that was now running an escort business, but a little of both. And one day, out of complete desperation, I told her what was happening. She happened to be in a situation where she was she was about to get in a lot of trouble and needed to make some changes. I was in a lot of trouble and could help her fix those changes. We solved each other's problems. She helped me get away from him. Sex workers can absolutely be a trafficking survivor's best ally. Had it not been for her listening to me, I don't even know. I can't draw any conclusions because I don't know what would happen. I am grateful. I am, with every part of my life and being, grateful to her because she listened and she helped me. And I found myself 18 years old. My driver's license said I was 23, believing that all I was good for was a hoe, knowing that I can make $1,000 a day, and McDonald's or Red Robin is kind of a joke, right? Because one, I had just experienced a whole lot of trauma. There were no resources. What do? I willingly took that step into being a sex worker. It was fully my choice. The almost 3 years that I was a sex worker was some of the most empowering times of my life. I cannot say from my perspective that it was empowering because I loved what I did. I can say it was empowering for me because it gave me the ability and the freedom to overcome the things of my childhood, like poverty and abuse. And it gave me finally control over my body that says, this is mine. I am proud of who I am. It doesn't matter where I've been. I am me and I am worth more. That's why it was empowering for me. I hit a time, after about 4 years total in the sex industry, I couldn't take it anymore. It was still too intense. Because the vast majority of my buyers were nice. They were good. But because prostitution or sex work is criminalized, that makes anyone in that industry a prime target for criminals. I ended up partying really hard one day. And I had like the first hangover of my life. And I had dreams of being pregnant. And I went to a clinic, and you know the white walls, the smell. And I got the positive test. And I quit doing drugs. And I quit drinking in one day. The drug withdrawals, combined with morning sickness, are more intense than anything I could ever express. It's easier to have your face caved in. Much, much easier. It's coming out of every single pore. It was ruthless. And I've never gone back. Today, she's 13 years old. And an amazing young lady. Well, a few years after I had her, I ended up meeting another man who told me all the same things. And he listened. You know, you're beautiful, you're special. You can be somebody, you can be anybody. And he meant it in a very different way. And it was kind of funny because sexuality is so wrapped up in all of this, because whether it's sex work or trafficking, there's a whole lot of sex involved, or sexuality. And so for years I was bi, and then when I left, I was just kind of non. I'm sure they have a term for it, but I was just like, never again. And then I met this guy, and he was very different. And oddly enough, he was a virgin. He had never even kissed anyone until our wedding day, because we wanted to do something dramatically different. Here's the kicker. We couldn't have sex on our wedding day because I was having a herpes outbreak. Because some things do follow you forever, and you can get herpes with the use of condoms. So we had to wait another 3 days. The man who had waited his entire life to have sex now had to wait longer. We only knew each other for 7 months when we got married. We never dated. He was just my best friend. In March, we'll have been married 10 years. We had 4 more kids together. And he is still my best friend.